Welcome to Life Science Marketing Radio, the podcast where marketing leaders inside and outside the sciences share their creative ideas and practical approaches to increasing your marketing ROI. Here's your host, Chris Connor.
Abdul Rastagar is the principal and founder and a GTM advisor at Serona Marketing. Abdul, welcome to Life Science Marketing Radio.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me. So excited to be here.
You are a member of a group that we've been featuring recently of people I met, but I was the only person in this group that didn't know everybody else, I think. So I said, I'm going to interview all these people, make content, and find out what they're all about. So today, we're going to talk about cutting the bullshit out of marketing. This is up first. Right. So tell me, I think you might have a newsletter or something by the same title. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I've got a podcast and a newsletter by that title. When I started, I was like, should I go with cut the BS or cut the bullshit? Eventually, I'm like, you know what? People have told me, if anybody who knows you just curse left and right. So just go with the bullshit. Okay, fine. Let's do it.
Fair enough.
So I started it because I see so much just kind of, let's call it what it is, BS in marketing, right? In business in general. There was a book years ago written that said Business Without the Bullshit, which is kind of a little bit of the inspiration behind the idea here. But I feel like in marketing, we're doing things in an outdated processes in many ways. We're doing things because there's pressure from external people who don't know marketing necessarily. There are all these things we do in marketing that are not effective. And when I started with the newsletter and the podcast, I wanted to just get around that. Let's just call it what it is. This works. This doesn't work. Let's move on, right? So that was the inspiration.
So you mentioned, well, let's talk about where the BS comes from. You mentioned processes. I know that's some of it.
Yeah. I mean, so for one thing, I think we're stuck in many ways in outdated processes from like a decade ago. Things that made sense in 2012, 13, 14, right? But don't make sense anymore today. But we got locked into them because we're using technologies, and these technologies they put you through specific workflows and through specific metrics, right? And everybody's been coached, everybody outside of business, all the executive team has been coached to think of these things as important over the years because we told them we need to invest in hundreds of thousands of dollars in all this MarTech, right? Tools, and this is how we do it. And then, well, okay, let's focus on that. And now, things have changed. Things changed before the pandemic, during the pandemic, after the pandemic. But we're still using those same systems and processes, right? And so that's one of the biggest kind of drivers is like you're doing things, you're focusing on attribution, you're doing the whole the MQL vortex is what I call it, right? Chasing leads that don't convert, just wasting a lot of time on things that are just not effective. And that's, to me, one of the biggest pieces of bullshit out there, right? What you should be doing is things that are effective, that are modern. The customers evolved over the 3-4 times over the last decade. We haven't necessarily kept up, right? I don't want to say it's universal, but in many cases it is, right? There are people and companies who get it. One of the things I always advocate is to sell the way the customer wants to be sold to and wants to buy, right? Because they're looking to buy. They're not close to it, but they're not looking to buy your process, through your process, right? So that means you get on the pricing page on a website, right? It says pricing really up there on the navigation part. You click pricing. What do you get? You get a pop-up, call sales. I'm like, I don't want to call sales. I want to see the pricing. So what does the customer do? They go on to these communities, right, of other peers, and they ask, hey, that particular software, is anybody else using it? And I say, yeah, how much are you paying? And then they'll tell them how much. So all that information is being transacted for already in the background, right? They'll go to what's a company called Vendor? Is that what it is? It's a community where you go in there and then people share pricing information with each other, right? That's dedicated to doing that. So there's no reason to hide pricing anymore and force somebody to call the SDR, because what happens is you go in and you press, okay, pricing, and then you have to set up a demo, and first you have a junior SDR qualifying you, and then you have to go through a demo, and then you have the third or fourth call, like 3 weeks later, a sales rep will come and sit down with you and talk you through the pricing. I'm like, I needed to know this 3 weeks ago. All I needed was like, am I in the ballpark right range, right? In many cases, you're not even in the ballpark. So everybody's time is wasted. Your time as a customer is wasted, but more importantly, from the vendor side, they have all of this time that they just wasted going through this process that was developed in 2012, 13, 14, right? So that's a perfect example of bullshit. So
Yeah. I wasn't even thinking about that, but it's a great example. I mean, when all those tools came out, I thought, oh, gotta have this, right?
yeah,
And what can we do with it? And we've been trained now to raise all these barriers to get people to manipulate the customer into doing what we hope they'll do.
perfect word, right? Barriers. That's absolutely you. You've created all of this friction because you have processes that you need to go through because they're legacy processes for your company. The customer doesn't want friction, right? Why do people buy on Amazon all the time? It's because it's a one-click buy, right? It is so simple. Amazon, what the beauty of what Amazon has done is remove the friction in every single step of the process. Whereas all the B2B companies have done the opposite and put in more and more barriers to friction, right? But that's not how people buy anymore, right? Like I'm sure you've heard that stat: 70% of the sale is done before the evaluation is done before they ever contact you. I actually think it's probably higher, right? I see it all the time. I'm in these CMO communities and I'm other different types of communities, closed communities, where people are constantly talking to each other about this vendor, that service provider, that company, right? And evaluating them before they're even like talking to the sales rep. So by the time the client will call a sales rep, they already know far more about you than you know about them, right? So yeah, that's
So the processes, if I'm thinking about it right, largely built for tracking and measurement and
right.
know who we could follow up with, which is a worthy goal, but is costing us something. And pricing, just to push back a little bit, I can imagine many scenarios where people say, if I put my price up, then competitor A is going to put price minus $100 or something. Or they're going to know, and our price is actually in a window like everybody's prices are. I'm trying to formulate a question around that. Like, how do we do marketing? Because it seems like the fundamentals of marketing, like getting people interested, should stay the same. And how do we
Yeah.
maintain our confidence that they're actually going to call us?
Yeah, no, absolutely, right. So the fear of competitors knowing our pricing, I think, is a little over. I don't know if the right exaggerated. If that's so, it's a little. The anxiety is too much, right? You are going to compete against 4 to 5 other vendors. They're all going to have your pricing. You know they're going to ballpark me in this range, unless you're going in a very high touch professional services engagement with really close margins, right? That's a different world where pricing truly makes a huge difference. In some of these more B2B SaaS type situations, what we're talking about, who cares if the competitor sees your pricing? It's fine, right? Especially at the lower end. Like, look, you have your single users you're paying, your pricing is like $20 a month or whatever, $30 a month. Who cares if yours is 25 and one's 24 or whatever, right? What's more important is that you reduce that friction so that they actually come talk to you, right? Because if you reduce that friction and they come talk to you versus the other person who's like closes the pricing, doesn't show, they're not even going to talk to you at all, right? Which boat would you rather be in? That's my perspective on this, right? Within that, of course, there's variance. There's a lot of variance in what's right and what's wrong, and somebody has to figure out their own approach. But it's a lot more effective to have those conversations with clients, have them understand who you are well in advance of the sales call, right? So that means opening up your kimono, I guess, if that's a right expression about not just from a thought leadership perspective, but also here's our technology, here open demos. I don't believe in like gated content either. So I think that's just some of the things where I say when the customers evolve, that's become the baseline expectation. And in many cases, companies are still not comfortable with that. And I want to encourage that. Part of the Cut the Bullshit podcast and the whole idea behind the newsletter is just to encourage that kind of thinking. It's like, let's move on, right?
Yeah.
And, yeah. So
I like it. I mean, I appreciate, particularly for SaaS companies. I mean, they to know the pricing, and I could ask why wouldn't life science companies do that at least to some degree, even to put up a range of something.
your customer needs to know if they're in the ballpark,
Right.
right? Are they going to invest Nobody wants to invest 3 weeks of their time to figure out at the end of 3 weeks, I'm not even in the ballpark. That's happened to me multiple times, right? When I ran marketing at places. And it's the most frustrating experience. And you have all of your managers working, calling these potential vendors, and all of their time's been wasted because they're going through these long sales processes that at the end of the day we decide, well, that's not even remotely realistic for us, right? When I go on a vendor's page, like almost invariably, personally, I go on for the pricing page first and foremost. Like I don't know how widespread that is, but that's my behavior. I go click on pricing first before I do anything else, because if I'm not in the ballpark, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I like the removing friction, and certainly Amazon has, done a beautiful job at that.
Yeah.
I would like to know what systems they have behind that besides just that mentality that
They know
drives.
everything about us, don't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That would be helpful. You mentioned to me how marketing is the only function where everybody else in the company is telling you how to do your
Oh my
job.
gosh. Yeah.
Talking about that a little bit.
In fact, it is. If you're in marketing, you know this pain, right? Ops will come to you and tell you to do this, or finance will say, "Why don't we do that?" Or sales will say, "I have a great idea." Right? The balance. The thing is, sometimes those ideas are actually pretty good, right? Now you have to kind of balance it about, well, do you have the time and the bandwidth, and where does it sit in your strategic priorities? But everybody has an opinion on your job when it comes to marketing. I would never have the audacity to go in and have an opinion on accounting's work, right? I would never have the audacity to do that for operations or whatever it is, right? And that's one of the things that I think marketing is like the big challenge and the pain point for marketers. Like, I hear this all the time. It's like, oh, I roll. The CEO doesn't. There's a very good story. This is a CMO said that they had the CEO tell them that the spouse didn't like the colors of the new logo. So the CEO's spouse didn't like the colors. So you're like, well, how do you deal with that? And it goes all the way up to the board level, right? The board, that most board members do not come from marketing backgrounds, but they have an opinion on everything in marketing. And you can't just say no to the board when they say something. You have to address it. So that's some of the bullshit that we deal with in marketing. And I think for me, the trick has always been like, okay, what's a good idea? Because sometimes the really good ideas do come out of these things. And then where do I prioritize that good idea? And then how do I say no to people in a way that's constructive, right? I still want to be collaborative and friendly and let people know that I appreciate their input, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's just fascinating. And I think I've seen examples of that on some chats somewhere, but of the CEO's wife. Whatever colors you pick, there are plenty of people who will not like them.
Yeah. When I started my business, Serrano Marketing, one of the things I wanted to do with the colors, I didn't want the typical life sciences blue. Have you noticed in life science, everything is blue, right? So you look at our colors, they pop. They're maroon, they're just lime green, there's this maroon and crimson red. It just pops, and it's so completely different than everything else. And, I get it, it's out there, it's not for everybody, but I heard from several people who are not even in the industry or in my space at all, like, oh, I don't like that color. I'm like, great, good for you.
Thank you, yeah.
I didn't ask for your opinion, and since you gave it to me, I'm not going to do anything about it either, right? It's just because you'll never make everybody happy anyways, right? So you've got to pick what works for you, what you think works for you.
Right. I do have colors that I don't prefer for some things. My wife jokes or teases me because I don't like going to a Shell gas station because the red and yellow together are like a punch in the face to me.
Oh, too much.
I don't dislike them all the time, but that's when having said that, I feel like, and this is totally off topic, but brand colors, you kind of grow into them. That's the whole purpose.
Yeah.
Is that they become an association. They're not the definition.
Exactly, right, exactly. And it's a certain feel as well with the brand color. Certainly for us, it has been. It says a lot. I feel like it says a lot about us, right? The whole idea of being just dynamic, different. I think the most important thing is actually when we picked the green part of it, we were thinking very hard about accessibility, right? Because if you have color blindness, then that's hard to see the green. So we had to, when we worked on our website, we had to be very careful about making sure that we use the right shadings, even though we have still the green and the color schemes, but
Uh-huh.
the lettering and so forth has to be accessible. So as long as you're aware of those things, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're never going to make everybody happy with your logo and your brand. Just, it's for you. You figure out what you want and then go with it, right?
Right. Yeah, I think about redoing some of my things occasionally, and I go, at this point, why? And which isn't to say it'll never happen, but I feel like, my podcast music or whatever, people know, or been hearing it for 10 years, it's going to come on. They're going to, oh, here
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So what's funny,
Jim,
my first podcast that I did during the pandemic was called Up Your Game, and it was all about marketing job interviews. And I retired that podcast a while back now, but I would always wear the purple shirt. Like I had like four shirts, and I would wear those like every single episode. It was with those four shirts. They were all purple, just to make, because it was the color scheme. I actually purple is my personal favorite color, so that was kind of the color scheme I went with. And some people actually mentioned that, like, "Hey, you're always wearing the same color shirt." I'm like, "That's by intention." So
that's part of it. You'll be happy to know that you are outlined in purple when you speak right now.
I see it, yeah.
No one will ever, no one on the other side will ever see that. But
Yeah.
so, do you have any other specific examples of BS in marketing that aren't?
I mean, gosh, so much. And I want to be polite and respectful, but even you just hop on LinkedIn, you see so much of it, right? People just crowing and are bragging about things that aren't real, saying all kinds of things, playing all these games. Actually, one of my biggest frustrations, and this isn't actually the creators on LinkedIn, the people who are creators on LinkedIn. It's not their fault. They're playing a certain game to try and game the LinkedIn algorithm, and I fault actually LinkedIn for having such a bad algorithm. Like no one's content is being seen anymore because it's been turned into a pay-for-play platform, right? So everybody's playing these games, but you see all these engagement pods, you see bots, you see just useless commentary, useless content, clickbait left and right, the kind of stuff that wasn't there, let's say 3 years ago, 3 years ago, right? It's the quality of the feed has really, really diminished in my mind. And that's one of the biggest pieces of bullshit I see out there. And again, I actually fault LinkedIn for this because people are trying to get their content seen, and
Yeah, I definitely, there's some of those in my feed, people that I think may have reasonable content sometimes, and then it's clearly the same person commenting on them every time, and that comment adds nothing.
exactly right. The comments are useless, and then you see what I've noticed lately is this whole trend of like somebody will post a meme, and within like a minute, like 14 other memes of the same idea
Yeah.
are in the comments below, right? And everybody's trying. There's got to be an engagement pod in the background because you can't create a meme that quickly to respond to that one. Or maybe you can, but the other 12 people can't, right? So I think there's a lot of that just fake engagement that's being driven on LinkedIn, and it's really frustrates me because it's such a powerful and important platform, and to see the feed go down in quality is annoying.
I don't get that. I don't think I've seen that. I might brag a little and say I'm an outstanding curator of my feed
You
because I
must
haven't gotten
you
that one
must
yet.
be better than I am. So
But
maybe
here's
that's
what I'm
maybe
not good at curating. Tell me, I'd love your thoughts on this. Trade show announcements on LinkedIn. Come by the booth. We're so excited to be here. Does that fall in the BS category? And what would you do differently?
yeah. Okay, so first of all, I do them as well. There's like this certain expectation to do them, right? So this is one of those things where like if you don't do them, people look at you like, "What's wrong with you?" Right? Are they effective? I don't know. Are they? But they don't cost you much, right? It's just an announcement, a little simple little post, and you do your checkbox and go on. Fine. You could. That's the reality of any job, not just marketing. You do have to do those kinds of things. I think what's much more valuable is the personalized outreach. Like, hey, we're going. You can post this thing on LinkedIn, but what's more important is like you go through your list of contacts and go, hey, we're going to be at the trade show. Are you going to be there? Can we talk? Right? You send them an email or whatever, a DM, and then by the way, you can link back to your LinkedIn post if you want with the information about it. So that's much more valuable, right? The post itself doesn't really have any sort of effect. Like who's going to go see this post and go, oh, I'm going to go see this vendor, right?
Yeah, from my point of view, there's never any value in the post itself. Like why I should go see you. Just
Yeah,
like there's an assumption that you know us, and of course we have cool stuff to show you. Come by the booth,
yeah,
and I'm always thinking like, what about the people who don't know you?
yeah. You know what's actually a lot more effective, and I've done this before with like had the founder do a 30-second demo of a certain aspect of their product, and like, hey, if you want to see more, I'm going to be at this conference. Come see me. Right? That's actually a lot more powerful. Or if you're not going to be at this conference, let's call and let's talk. Right? That works, and then you can email that demo video as well. Right? So that's much more effective.
I like that because it's also just an excuse to reach out, even if they're not going. Right? Hey,
Absolutely, absolutely.
we're going. Are you going to be there? Oh, you're not? Well, let's. Here's what you're missing.
Yeah.
Let's set up a time to talk about that.
Yeah, exactly, right? So if you strategically time delivery of content before a trade show, right? So if you, I mean, it's hard with publications because you don't have control the timing, but if there's an article that comes out in a specific industry publication in whatever life sciences, or let's say it's applied clinical trials, and it comes out like a month or so before the conference, right? Then you can use that as a, hey, here's an article, check out, read this, send it to an email. You have a reason to email somebody. And then, by the way, I'm going to be at this conference, right? Let's go talk about it some more. That's a lot more powerful than just, hey, here's my little, we'll be at booth 17. Come see us.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, I got one more question for you. I hope this is relevant. I think it is. I want to see, how can people be more creative and effective in reaching their goals without all the BS around it? Like, what would you say to people? Just say, we want to be creative, we want to get people's attention, but we want to do it the right way. Sort of a fundamentals question.
Yeah, I mean, if I knew the answer to that, I would do it every day, right? I do have some theories behind it. I'm a big believer in thought leadership, right? I'm a big believer in people having to know your brand before you can do any sort of sales outreach, effective sales outreach. So any client that I advise, I always start building out the fundamentals first and messaging and the positioning, get your value proposition right. But after that, right, stop selling the product, sell your knowledge, right? I forget where I heard this. Somebody said this, be generous with your knowledge. And I thought that was so beautiful. Educate people, educate your market, right? And it's not about what your tool does. It's about here are how we do things differently. Here are the major challenges. Here's why it's outdated. And you keep pushing that point of view in publications, at conferences, speaking, or doing podcasts or whatever, right? And people will become familiar with you, and then they'll start to talk to you about, hey, what is the product? That one leads into the other. And I think most people, especially at the product development and early founder stage, are like so focused on, spending all my time building this product, and people must love it once they see it, right? And that's not really the case. So don't sell your product, sell your knowledge, sell your understanding of things first, right?
Yeah, I can't echo that hard enough. I mean, that's I'm taking a writing class, and the whole theme is people don't care what you think as much as how you think. That's another way to say it. I mean, and because that's what's attractive. Like, and I think people underestimate like the credibility you build when you lay out your knowledge, like you say, and your point of view, and they go, oh, that sort of resonates with me, even if they wouldn't think of it the same way, and maybe even better. Then they go, because you've enlightened them, and scientists for sure, they always want to be learning, right?
Yeah.
And so your product may solve a problem they have in the lab, but connecting with someone who's going to teach them something about it before they buy it.
Yeah, absolutely,
is the
right.
secret lubrication to that process.
So I have actually a really funny story for that, or interesting, actually fascinating story. It just so this the CEO of a company that I'm advising, and we just published an article a few weeks ago in an industry publication, and then there was a conference last week. And at the conference, the CEO was saying he was standing there just kind of waiting for something, and he heard two people next to him talking about his article. And he leaned over and said, hey, just join the conversation. I'm the author of this article, right? And one of those people happens to be an ICP, right? So now they're in a conversation. So, I mean, first of all, incredible, right? And it doesn't happen very often to have it that neatly worked out. But like, what a cool story of, hey, the idea of thought leadership and being generous with your knowledge leading to an actual sales conversation, right?
Yeah.
And that's how, when I say customers have evolved, right? That's part of it. It's like people are in the background talking to each other about things that you have no idea about. And this happened to be, the CEO happened to be standing right then and there. If he hadn't been standing there, that would have been a different conversation. But that's really where the whole idea of what I say is get out there with thought leadership, get out there with brand awareness, brand development. Even if the board hates the word brand, they don't like it at all. But call it top of funnel if you need to, whatever. But that's where the value is. The value creation comes in.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the good news and bad news of social media. I mean, 20 years ago, you couldn't have had the access to do that kind of thing. You would be reliant on publications and the rare article you would get mentioned in or
Yeah.
whatever. And now you can make your own. So that leads to my last question. If I already said that was the last, I lied.
Second last.
Yeah, because I've heard this and I've probably experienced it. There are a lot of CEOs who say, we should be thought leaders. I don't want to be the face of my company. And the missed opportunity, and I'll just add one more thing. People worry about like, or what if I make this person a thought leader and they go somewhere else?
Yeah.
Are we
I
screwed?
mean, that's real. That's real. I've invested in executives and turning them into thought leaders, and they moved on. Right. That's the reality of it. I mean, as the CEO or founder, you have so much authority, and people want to listen to you and hear you. Right. So I always encourage people to be public. Having said that, I have an understanding. I've come to painfully accept that not everyone wants to be. It's a personality thing. Some people just feel genuinely uncomfortable with it, and you can try and coach them through it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? So you have to kind of work with that individual's personality to some extent. But I'm a big believer that the best marketing comes from your leadership team. Right? They should be out there posting and talking and sharing their knowledge on a regular basis. That's how you develop your brand as a company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully some couple people listen to this and look into it a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about what if the person leaves, that's going to be a reality of some extent or another, right? So then the question is, do you want to not do it at all? Or do you want to do it and benefit from it while that person is here? I think you're better off still benefiting something out of it rather than not getting that voice at all, right?
Right.
So,
And you can decide to not use it any longer or whatever you want to do. I mean, there's all kinds of problems like that where I just had another one on the top of my head. It just went away about, making sure that what people say in a presentation or anything is a certain way. And I think your salespeople are out there talking to people unminded all the time.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's a reason to have sort of brand standards, but you can't regulate every last thing. So
Yeah,
you got to trust people.
exactly right. So you got to train them correctly and then trust that they'll do it right. Starts
Yep.
with the hiring the right people, and then from there.
Awesome. Abdul Rastagar, thank you so much for this thing today. I really enjoyed it. I hope people listen to your podcast. I will put a link to your website and the podcast in the show notes for this episode.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me on.
My pleasure.
All right, take care. Bye.
You too. Hey, if you're still listening, that tells me you enjoyed the podcast. But don't tell me, tell your friends, and I'll be back soon with another episode. Okay, you can tell me too. Send an email, chris@lifesciencemarketingradio.com. Bye-bye.